This is the tale of a so-called villainous woman who ends up marrying into a struggling noble family at the edge of civilization. In a world that runs like a dating sim game, everyone expects her to be just another selfish noble. But she flips the script with her brains, skills, and unshakable will. Together with her husband, she ends up fighting against the fate the game had written for them. Things kick off with Ragnar Brave, the third son of a once famous noble family. He never thought he'd be stuck with a pile of boring responsibilities. But after a brutal war wipes out his entire family, he's left holding the reins of a crumbling frontier land known as the Land of Bravery, a place that's more chaos than kingdom. Sitting in his office, drowning in paperwork, Ragnar can't help but feel fed up. In a world full of swords, spells, and monsters, he's stuck doing admin work. The constant reports, rebuilding efforts, and supply issues are enough to drive anyone crazy. He was trained to fight, not file. News comes in. Most of the mansion's staff didn't survive the last attack. The place is understaffed, half-broken, and barely holding together. Yet somehow, he's expected to keep it running. The territory itself is a mess. Sure, it's got valuable resources, rare minerals, monster parts, and more. But none of that matters when monsters roam free and nearby enemies treat the region like their personal playground. Fires, ambushes, destroyed farms. It's non-stop disaster. No one wants to live there. Most nobles act like the place doesn't even exist. Ragnar breaks down the situation with someone close to him. Turns out, no one in his family ever learned how to manage a territory. His dad and older brothers were warriors through and through. Ragnar, he was supposed to be the free one, trained to explore, to fight beasts, to roam the wilds, not run a broken-down estate. But life had other plans. The war left him the last one standing. Now he's got a title, a ruined land, and a future filled with problems. He'd honestly rather go monster hunting than deal with tax ledgers and crop failures. Still, giving up isn't an option. The region can't survive on its own. It needs allies, and that means playing nice with the rest of noble society. Which means going back to the capital, attending the academy, and building connections. Problem is, Ragnar isn't good with that stuff. Fancy talk, hidden agendas, fake smiles. It's a different kind of battlefield, and he's not sure he's cut out for it. Out of nowhere, news arrives there's been a marriage proposal. A noble family from the countryside wants to form a bond through marriage. It sounds sudden and fishy. Most noble women want nothing to do with the Land of Bravery. Even Ragnar's brother's fiancés bailed when things got hard. He almost says no without thinking, but then he learns the truth. The bride's family is the main supplier of weapons and food for the territory. If he turns this down, he could lose the only lifeline the region has left. So, he pauses. Maybe there's more to this than just another arranged marriage. Maybe this is survival. Later that night, Ragnar stares at the ceiling in his room, completely drained. Memories from another life begin to creep in. Strange dreams, flashes of things that don't belong. One image stands out, getting hit by an orc. He can't remember when or how, but it feels too real to be fake. He picks up an old phone buried in his things, and it flickers to life. On the screen is a game with his name in it. He opens it, and his heart sinks. Everything clicks. This world isn't just some fantasy. It's the setting of an Otome game he once played in a past life. The main character of that game? A commoner girl who joins a noble academy, meeting a bunch of potential love interests, each with their own dramatic arcs. But the story doesn't have a happy ending. The game builds up to a huge war. The royal capital turns into a war zone, cities burn, noble houses fall, and right in the middle of it all, his territory, his people. Ragnar realizes the truth. This game world has a script, and it's heading straight for disaster. If he wants to protect what's left, he'll have to fight fate itself. Among the characters, one figure stands out, Alika Oldwood, a noble woman trained to become a queen, and the princess fiancé with her flawless beauty and exceptional talents. She outshines all others. but her personality is depicted as cruel and ice. Her role in the game is to serve as an obstacle for the protagonist. She constantly strengthens her bond with the prince, engaging in acts of harassment that only escalate with time. Eventually, this rivalry culminates in a duel fought for the prince's honor. With her suffering a humiliating defeat, the aftermath of her failure is swift. She's immediately stripped of her engagement to the prince. His thoughts turn to her future as he recalls the events of the game. According to the storyline, after this incident, she takes responsibility for her actions and is sent to marry a frontier noble, a fate that seems harsh yet fitting given her role in the game. As he contemplates this, he realizes, with a sinking feeling, that the woman approaching his home is none other than herself. She approaches unaware of his thoughts and wonders if the house belongs to her family. He, lying on his bed, dreads the thought of sharing his life with a woman of such a volatile nature. He imagines that her arrival will lead to daily verbal abuse, and the prospect of attending the academy with her fills him with despair. Just as his anxiety grows, his loyal servant informs him that she has arrived. He's startled by the news, and after quickly dressing, inquires with genuine concern why a woman raised solely for the crown prince's benefit would come to his house. Seba suggests that she might be fleeing trouble seeking refuge and sets an example by coming to a place with a high mortality rate like Bray territory. This revelation shocks him further, intensifying his unease. He stands before her door, his mind racing when she finally emerges. He's taken aback by the sight of her. He started noticing a large burn scar around her eye. Seva greets her, introducing himself, and she responds of the melancholy tone, acknowledging his reaction to her appearance. She explains with a quiet sorrow that the burn was the result of the duel she lost. He, feeling a mix of embarrassment and concern, tries to address the situation tactfully, suggesting that the burn could be a common occurrence in such a dangerous region, as soldiers and ventures often bear scars. He looks at her face, feeling a deep sympathy for the way her beauty has been marred. However, he quickly catches himself, thinking that her scar now seems fitting for someone who may face a life of shame. Their interaction continues as he notices something unusual on his hand. When he opens his palm, he finds a demon bug clinging to it. She explains that these creatures are born from curses and represent the hatred and grudges of those around her. She reveals that the sheer number of demon bugs afflicting her is a reflection of the intense animosity she faces. He's struck by the significance of this revelation, realizing that she has been deeply hated by those around her. As she shares this with him, he becomes aware of her calm demeanor despite the overwhelming curse she carries. His thoughts begin to shift, and he wonders if perhaps her actions, including her challenges to the protagonist in the game, are not entirely her own. This world, he reflects, a place built for drama where antagonism is necessary for the narrative to unfold. The more he considers it, the more he begins to question whether her behavior is a product of the game's manipulations, distorted to fit a twisted storyline. He begins to see that both of their pawns in a world dictated by fate, with neither of them in control of their own destinies. He realizes that he knows her future, how in the game she eventually makes a pact with a demon and becomes a monster, wreaking havoc and ultimately causing the destruction of Brave territory. He's deeply troubled by this knowledge, knowing that every possible path leads to the ruin of his territory. It becomes clear to him that his fate is intertwined with hers, and if he does nothing, the destruction of his homeland is inevitable. His concern grows as he contemplates his next move. He's caught between the desire to resist the narrative and the fear that no matter what he does, the world around him is destined for ruin. However, a new determination rises within him despite the grim future that seems inevitable. He resolves to help her start anew. He wishes to offer her a chance to rebuild her life and avoid the fate that awaits her in the game's story. Together, they stand at a crossroads, uncertain of the future, but his resolve strengthens. He may not be able to change the world. He will do everything in his power to protect her in his territory as they continue their walk through the house. He is startled when he accidentally steps on a demon bug, killing it. He reflects on his words to her, expressing his desire to resist this world. But she doesn't understand his meaning. She asks him to clarify, and he smiles, assuring her that it's nothing important, just his determination to try his best. She, clearly disappointed, confides that it has been a long time since anyone had smiled so freely at her. She begins to walk ahead, and he follows behind, silently contemplating the path they're about to walk together. Without either of them realizing it, something unusual begins to change inside her. 5 days quietly pass while she stays at the Brave family's estate. She doesn't speak much, doesn't cause any trouble. She just eats the meals left at her door and stays shut inside her room. She acts distant, keeping to herself. Meanwhile, he's busy trying to get rid of the demon bugs that keep showing up everywhere. It's frustrating. He even starts thinking, what if these things are being sent from far away using magic? He's overwhelmed, and it shows. One day, Seba shows up and sees how stressed out he looks. When asked, he snaps back, admitting that he can actually see the bugs and they're all over the place. He asks Seba for help. He considers tracking down where the bugs are coming from and stopping it at the source, but Seba warns him, doing that might bring the whole house down. That's when it hits him. Maybe the real problem isn't just the bugs. Maybe it's her heart, broken, full of pain, quietly drawing them in. It's not something he knows how to fix. Fighting? That the Brave family is good at. But understanding someone like her, that's new. Seba, seeing how lost he looks, tries to lift the mood. He says he's got a good idea. The next morning, he walks up to her door, knocks warmly, and calls out for her to join them for breakfast. Like a little academy tea party, just something casual to bond over. He tells her they should try connecting, just like people do back at school. To his surprise, the door swings open. She's already up and waiting, saying she left the door open just for this. He breathes out, relieved she's okay. They walk out together to have breakfast. While eating, she comments on how hard he knocked, wondering if he almost broke the door. He laughs and tells her not to worry. He can fix anything. After all, nobles should know a bit of everything, even repairs. But the main thing, he says, is to just enjoy the breakfast and the coffee. She goes quiet, picks up the cup, and takes a sip, then starts coughing. He looks concerned, but she just says the coffee's really bitter. Turns out, she's never had coffee before. Back where she came from, coffee was way too expensive, something only the wealthy could afford. She's clearly embarrassed. He quickly stands up, apologizes for not offering her tea instead, then adds sugar to her drink to make it easier to handle. She takes another sip, smiles, and says it tastes good now. He reminds her not to drink it too late at night. She might end up staring at the ceiling till morning. They both sit back and keep eating. She notices his plate and asks what he's having. He tells her it's monster meat. It shocks her. She asks if it's safe to eat. He shrugs and says they've been eating this stuff since they were kids, so they're used to it. It doesn't taste amazing, but it keeps them alive in tough times, especially during war. She stares at him, confused about why he insists on doing everything by himself. He lowers his eyes and admits it's because they're running out of people. Even the house staff will pick up weapons if needed, but most of them are already gone. She listens in silence. Then he stands, serious now. He says that in the Brave family, losing doesn't mean you failed, as long as you survive and keep moving. That's what matters. Getting back up again is what defines them. As he walks over to her, he gently touches her face. He tells her, through his eyes, that she's strong too. He says that in this place, they don't hide scars. They honor them. To prove it, he shows the mark on his own forehead. He steps closer, explaining that it's normal for him to get up close when checking a soldier's wounds. It's a habit, not an invasion. Then, changing the subject, he invites her out for a walk. He says the land around here may be messy, but it's beautiful, wild, full of life and untouched nature. He wants her to see it. She looks surprised. He continues, saying that when you're surrounded by nature like this, all the pain, all the fighting, it feels smaller, like it doesn't control everything. Like maybe, just maybe, there's more to life than suffering. She stood quietly for a while, thinking things through. Then, with a nod of confidence, she decided to go with him. She said she'd be glad to see the place he had in mind. They began their journey together. As they walked deeper into the mountains, she couldn't help but notice how endless and wild they seemed. She had no idea they were this massive. He pointed towards the Udini Mountains and started explaining how this place had a long, rugged history. It was far from the comforts of the capital and famous for rare herbs and minerals you couldn't find back home. She listened, a bit puzzled. She had expected to find a cute little village or maybe some famous local treats. But this wasn't that. He calmly told her there wasn't anything like that here. She must have realized already. This wasn't some tourist destination. This was a rough place where only monster hunters dared to live. He watched her carefully. Even though everything around her was unfamiliar, she was clearly trying her best to adjust. After a while, they stopped at a quiet spot. He suggested taking a break. She crouched near a stream, scooped water into her hands, and drank. It was crisp and cold, better than anything she'd tasted before. He explained why the mountains were so high up. The water didn't evaporate easily. It stayed clean and untouched. He called her name and said she'd never find water this pure back in the capital. This place might be harsh, but if you understood it, it got a little easier to bear. He went on to say that both friends and enemies lived on the same land here. You couldn't afford to underestimate either. If she wanted to survive, she had to take all of this seriously. Hearing his words, she began to realize just how deep and real this place was. He lowered his head and said this was something passed down in his family, the way of the brave. He shared an old saying, "People here make their own choices, and they fight for them." She thought about the people she'd seen so far. Their faces didn't match what she'd heard in rumors. He chuckled and said, "The people here don't really smile. That's just how they are." But right now, he added, it was totally fine to laugh. He said this place was where people risked their lives like it was a game. Then, without skipping a beat, he said it was time to keep moving. As they climbed higher, he encouraged her to laugh. She raised an eyebrow. Just moments ago, he said people don't laugh here, and now he wanted her to? She told him he was pretty weird. Still, she took his hand as they climbed. Suddenly, a strange glow appeared ahead. It stopped her in her tracks. He looked at her and said this was his favorite spot. Maybe to her it looked like just another view, but to him it meant something special. After walking so far, he figured she might be hungry and offered a small snack. She looked at him and asked if she could drop the formal tone. He smiled and said yes. He wasn't into all that fancy stuff. She looked surprised and said things like that didn't really matter out here. He nodded, understanding her completely. But then her mood changed. She stared ahead, deep in thought. Her voice turned serious. She said that choosing one path meant losing the other, and what was already gone couldn't be undone. She said the Duchess she used to be was already gone. That's why she ended up in this harsh land. She apologized for getting too emotional. She was just tired. Sick of the lies, the pressure, the bugs crawling in her mind. He asked if she really couldn't let go of those feelings. He remembered something his servant Sabus once told him, that he was bad at pretending, and maybe he should just face things head on. With new determination, he looked at her and said he would protect her from now on. Her eyes widened in shock. He told her that she didn't belong to the duchy anymore now. She was part of the Brave family. Her name would be Alicia. At that moment, he made a vow, one he would never break. He promised to protect her no matter what. She smiled, a bit surprised by his seriousness, and said it didn't seem like he'd said something like that before. Embarrassed, he admitted he had actually practiced saying that line. She laughed and asked, "Who does that?" He had planned to propose in a classy, noble way, sitting down like they did in the capital, but clearly, that plan didn't go well. She saw how disappointed he looked and reassured him. She said the way he said it was better, simple, honest, and easy to understand. Then she said maybe he was right. Maybe she had just been overthinking everything. She reached out her hand to seal their promise. He reminded her that going back to the academy wouldn't be easy. People there would be cruel to her. She asked if he'd still stand by her even then. He smiled, totally confident, and said he was good at dealing with that kind of thing. she could leave it to him. Then he shouted out for Onyx. She blinked, confused, not sure what he meant. Suddenly, a massive dragon, dark and towering, appeared over the ridge. It said it heard his call. He introduced the creature, Onyx, his friend. He had even thought of making the dragon a witness to their vow. The sight was too much. Her eyes widened, and before she could say anything, she fainted. He caught her and laughed gently, teasing that she really was fragile, fainting just from seeing his friend. And just like that, their first step together ended with a bang. A wild beginning under the shadow of a legendary dragon, and the arcane winds of fate watching them from afar.